Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at Leviticus chapter 20. God is continuing to give instructions for His standard on moral and ethical purity. And God demands that people who are called by His name act differently than the rest of the world. They should be His images, reflecting His holiness. And that applies to us today too. We literally call ourselves Christians. We bear that title. This chapter delves into some of the particularly dark aspects of ancient Near Eastern cultures, specifically child sacrifice. God has no room for excuses on this subject, as we'll see. And yet we know from the rest of the Bible that the Israelites did become very similar to these pagan societies. So we don't only need a law like this to tell us what's right and wrong. We need someone to model it for us, to transform our hearts and not just redirect our behavior. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "You also shall say to the sons of Israel, any man from the sons of Israel, or from the alien sojourning in Israel, who gives any of his offspring to Molech, shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. I will also set my face against that man, and will cut him off from among his people, because he has given some of his offspring to Molech, so as to defile my sanctuary, and to profane my holy name." Child sacrifice is one practice that's vehemently opposed to God's vision for His life-filled creation. God prevents the Israelites from sacrificing their children to a false god named Molech. This name is related to the Hebrew word melech, which means king. Molech was the chief or king of the gods for the Ammonites, according to 1 Kings 11. They were a Canaanite people group that would later go to war with Israel. And there's actually some archaeological evidence of child sacrifice happening in this area at this time. In the 4th century BC, secular Greek historians like Diodorus Siculus described rituals like child sacrifice happening in places like Carthage, a city with Canaanite influence. This is according to BibleReadingArchaeology.com. Then in 1921, a cemetery in Carthage was discovered that was filled with urns with remains of up to 20,000 infants and young children. These urns were engraved with prayers to pagan gods, and mentions of child sacrifice was found on the urns. This was obviously a horrific practice, and the living God of Israel had no place for it. When we focus on pleasing other gods, or even other people or other systems, we can quickly become distracted and excuse or even justify killing and death. God is always on the side of life. He wants His creation to live with Him. But for someone who would do something as corrupt as sacrificing their own child to a false god, there has to be a consequence for that action. And God demands that the same death that they dealt out be brought back on them. The God of life is instructing His people to carve out from themselves the disease of idolatry and the worship of death. If the people of the land, however, should ever disregard that man who gives any of his offspring to Molech, so as not to put him to death, then I myself will set my face against that man and against his family, and I will cut off from among their people both him and all those who play the harlot after him, by playing the harlot after Molech. God goes a step further. Not only is child sacrifice itself an atrocity, but excusing child sacrifice is also an extremely grave sin. God promises to avenge all of the innocent blood that was spilled in His creation, even if His people don't do anything about it. And yet, we know this will come to pass in Israel's future, as we can see from Jeremiah 32. Not only will some of the Israelites actually sacrifice their children, it's going to become normalized in their society. That's why they lose their claim on the Promised Land. That's why they end up going into exile. As for the person who turns to mediums and to spiritists, to play the harlot after them, I will also set my face against that person, and will cut him off from among his people. You shall consecrate yourselves, therefore, and be holy, for I am the Lord your God. You shall keep my statutes and practice them. I am the Lord who sanctifies you. If there is anyone who curses his father or his mother, he shall surely be put to death. He has cursed his father or his mother. His blood guiltiness is upon him. God once again commands His people to follow His example in being holy. This includes commands to stay away from false gods and mediums while obeying and honoring one's parents. God's instructions were supposed to be passed down from generation to generation. And that's why it was so important to obey father and mother, so that the chain of these instructions wouldn't be broken. Or else you find yourself in a society that worships Molech, which again is exactly what happened to the Israelites. Verses 10 through 21 all give punishments for the sexual immoralities that were described in Leviticus 18. All the cases of direct incest and bestiality, etc., those were to result in the death penalty. Meanwhile, less significant sins resulted in banishment. Over and over in these verses you see references to blood and blood guiltiness. As opposed to the guilt offerings from earlier, there were some actions that were so devious and nefarious that God didn't allow for atonement. The only way to pay for these sins would be with your own blood, not the blood of an animal. You are therefore to keep all my statutes and all my ordinances and do them, so that the land to which I am bringing you to live will not spew you out. Moreover, you shall not follow the customs of the nation which I will drive out before you, for they did all these things, and therefore I have abhorred them. Hence I have said to you, you are to possess their land, and I myself will give it to you to possess it, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am the Lord your God, who has separated you from the peoples. So why were these sins of sexual immorality so bad that they required death? It's because they happened constantly in the pagan societies of Israel's neighbors. God demanded that they be different, that they worship Him alone, and not stoop to the inhumane level of their neighbors. If they do what He's asked, God promises to provide for them and to protect them, to bring them into the promised land. And the atrocities committed by its current inhabitants have disqualified them from the privilege to live there. But notice that the same will be true for Israel too, if they ever become like the pagans. You are therefore to make a distinction between the clean animal and the unclean, and between the unclean bird and the clean. And you shall not make yourselves detestable by animal or by bird, or by anything that creeps on the ground, which I have separated for you as unclean. Thus you are to be holy to me, for I, the Lord, am holy, and I have set you apart from the peoples to be mine. Now a man or a woman who is a medium or spiritist shall surely be put to death. They shall be stoned with stones. Their blood guiltiness is upon them. And this is why God is commanding the people to do all of these things, whether it's keeping a list of clean and unclean animals or banning spiritists and mediums. It's all about keeping the people holy because their God is holy. They are to be different than their neighbors, specifically in the way that they reflect God's attributes back to His creation. That's what the goal of humanity was all the way back in Genesis 1, and we still have that same responsibility today as Christ followers. To be an image of God is to represent His holiness and His standards of purity back to the world and show them who their Creator really is. This includes valuing all life, especially the lives of the vulnerable who can't defend themselves. It also means not excusing the actions of those who are completely opposed to God's life and His blessings for the world. In America today, sacrificing a child to a pagan idol would be horrific to anyone. Much more common is the way parents neglect teaching their children about God and about the importance of following His commands. And then the parents are baffled as to why the kids turn around and disobey them. But above all, even as Christians today, we need to make sure that we're acting different than the rest of the world. We need to imitate God's holiness, obey His commandments, so that people will see an authentic faith lived out in our actions. Now, when we're left to our own power, that's impossible. But when we're obedient, when we're fellowshipping and following Jesus through His Holy Spirit, then all things are possible. Thanks for watching 1189. I hope that you have a good day, and God bless.